Welcome to the Chronological Bible Journey, where we discover God's whole word one day at a time. I'm Tanya. I'm here with Ben, and we will be your guides today as we discuss 1 Samuel 26 through 29, 1 Chronicles 12, and Psalm 56. It's day 108, so let's begin.
All right, Tanya, it is day 108. I'm excited to be here with you. I love as we start walking through this part of the chronological Bible, you have these different sections from all the different aspects. You just get a different feel than when you're reading one book at a time. Mm-hmm. It allows you to see how they all interplay together in time. It's an exciting time in God's Word. Today we find David is on the run again. He is fleeing from Saul and 3,000 of his troops. Imagine being you and a small group of guys against 3,000 warriors, and this is where David is at in his life.
A pretty terrifying place to be.
I would imagine so. Mm-hmm. I cannot imagine. David and Abishai, they find out that in the middle of the night, they see where Saul's camp is, and they sneak in while everyone is sleeping, and they find Saul there. Now, what does Abishai tell David to do?
Well, he says, hey, I can pin him right now. Basically, he says, let's take him.
Which sounds like the reasonable thing to do. Hey, David, the guy that wants to kill you is right here. Let me take care of this for you. And we've seen time and time again that David has a fear of the Lord when it comes to harming the anointed. David refused to harm the Lord's anointed in Saul. He chooses, I love this, he chooses to allow the Lord to fight his battles for him so that he can remain pure before the Lord.
And I love that too, because if you look at what is said, Abishai is saying, I can do this. So the bloodshed would really not even be on David's hands. Right. But he says, no, we are not doing it that way. We'll go God's way.
And which seems confusing to reasonable people. When you have somebody that's after you, we feel like it's our right to do harm to them because they're trying to do harm to us. But we understand that God's economy is very different than our economy in this place. Yeah. So what I love is they take, the spear and the water bag from Saul. They go to the other side of the mountain, and then David starts hollering and addresses Saul. He's like, hey, take a look. What's going on? Read for me, Tanya, 1 Samuel 26, 17 through 20.
Saul recognized David's voice and called out, is that you, my son David? And David replied, yes, my lord the king. Why are you chasing me? What have I done? What is my crime? But now let my lord the king listen to his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, then let him accept my offering. But if this is simply a human scheme, then may those involved be cursed by the Lord, for they have driven me from my home, so I can no longer live among the Lord's people. And they have said, go worship pagan gods. Must I die on foreign soil, far from the presence of the Lord? Why has the king of Israel come out to search for a single flea? Why does he hunt me down like a partridge on the mountains?
Man, imagine being Saul in this moment and hearing these words from David and recognizing I should be dead. And you have David in his mercy talking to Saul, like, why are you coming after me? He refers to himself as a flea,
right?
Recognizing that in the eyes of the king, he should be known, but yet he knows that Saul is out to get him.
And he speaks with such great respect towards Saul the whole time through.
Yeah, and I think that is a lesson to all of us today, that even in the midst of our enemies, we can still honor the Lord by remaining faithful and courteous and kind even to those that are coming to get against us. He says, blessings on you, my son David. This is what Saul says. He says, blessings on you, my son David. You will do many heroic deeds, and you will surely succeed. After this, Saul stopped, went home, yet David did not feel safe, so he fled into the territory of the Philistines with his men, and Saul stopped hunting David. So Saul's response was a positive response. He saved my life. That's a good thing.
Momentarily.
But yet, so Saul stopped hunting him. But David still felt unsafe and had to go over to the Philistine area. But what he would do in the Philistines, he made the Philistines happy by going into surrounding nations, attacking those nations, but coming back to the Philistines and saying, hey, I went in to Israel and I attacked them, and here's some of the spoils. And so he had kind of this lie going on in between the Philistine leaders and king then with him and his men. And so what you see is in the midst of this, David is just trying to survive. And he's found himself in a moment where he just has to rely on himself and the Lord. And then you have this picture of Saul in today's reading where David's response to fear was to go to the Lord. Saul's response was to go to Samuel. Imagine this. Now, this is for the audience, if you haven't been keeping up with us.
Who has passed away, by the way?
Samuel's dead. But look at Saul's desperation. He knows that he cannot go to the Lord because of where his heart is. And he is unwilling, I should say, to go to the Lord. So he is so desperate that he seeks to break his own law and to pursue witchcraft so that he can hear from a dead man. He could speak to the living God, but he would much rather speak to the prophet Samuel who has died. And so what you see is in 1 Samuel 28, read these words for us, Tanya, so that we can kind of see what Saul did.
When Saul saw the vast Philistine army, he became frantic with fear. He asked the Lord, what should he do? But the Lord refused to answer him, either by dreams or by sacred lights or by the prophets. Saul then said to his advisors, find a woman who is a medium so I can go and ask her what to do. His advisors replied, there is a medium at Endor. So Saul disguised himself by wearing ordinary clothing instead of his royal robes, and then he went to the woman's home at night, accompanied by 2 of his men. I have to talk to a man who has died, he said. Will you call up his spirit for me? Desperate.
Yes. That he is going to these folks. And what is just amazing is that the Lord actually allows this to happen. He allows Samuel, his spirit, to rise up and to speak to Saul. And this is what Samuel says. But Samuel replied, why ask me, since the Lord has left you and has become your enemy? The Lord has done just as he said he would. He has torn the kingdom from you and given it to your rival David. The Lord has done this to you today because you refused to carry out his fierce anger against the Amalekites. What's more, the Lord will hand you and the army of Israel over to the Philistines tomorrow, and you and your sons will be here with me. The Lord will bring down the entire army of Israel in defeat. Imagine what Saul felt like.
Right. No wonder he passed out on the floor and couldn't move.
Samuel, this dead man, says, hey, just so you know, you are coming to be with me soon. And this is the reality as we look at the desperation of Saul, the desperation of David in this moment, and you see 2 different responses.
I think it's important for us to remember, too, when we feel like, because those feelings will lie to us and they are very strong. So when we feel like we're in those moments of desperation, we need to remember, wait, I need to seek the Lord and not take things in our own hands. Because today people use things like, let me check my horoscope. Let me go to a palm reader or all these.
Or they'll go to anything but God.
Yes, but the Lord, because they want a person that they can see and hear to tell them this is what should happen.
Yeah, but sometimes if you have a real relationship with God, his voice is louder than any audible voice that you can hear.
That's right.
And we get to see David's heart in Psalm 56 that's in this passage. We see that David chooses to trust in God in the midst of his adversity. He says, I am constantly hounded by those who slander me, and many are boldly attacking me. But when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. He goes on to say, I trust in God. Why should I be afraid? Imagine that. He is coming up against death, but yet he is putting his trust in God and God alone. David chooses to respond with obedience and trust in God. He is unwilling to take things into his own hands. When he's given the opportunity to kill Saul, David trusted the Lord to fight his battles. Saul, on the other hand, responded with fear and disobedience. As he approached the reality of war with the Philistines, he willingly broke laws against the witchcraft that he had put in place in order to hear from Samuel. Saul turned to a dead man instead of turning to the Lord in the midst of trouble. Today, in the midst of our valleys, what we walk through, the trials and tribulations and adversity in life, we have a choice to make, Tanya. Are we going to trust in God? Are we going to trust in him and have confidence in God? Or are we going to trust in someone else or something else to deliver us from our fear?
That's right.
So David chose to respond in obedience and trust. Saul responded in fear and disobedience. those are the choices that we have today before us as we look in these passages, as we walk through trials and tribulations.
Later on, we'll see God says, choose this day whom you will serve. Actually, he's already said that in our readings. So choose this day who you will serve. And that's that choice we make. Are we going to trust God, or are we going to trust ourselves and man? Yeah, we need to choose this day. So good word for today, Ben. Sign up, join us for more encouragement on these podcasts. If you will click the show notes, you'll sign up for just more resources that will help you through this journey. Thanks for joining us today.